यदा संहरते चायम्
यदा संहरते चायं
कूर्मो अङ्गानिव सर्वशः
कूर्मो अङ्गानि वसः
सर्वशः
इन्द्रिया इन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः
इन्द्रिया
इन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः
तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
So we covered this last week, but I just wanted to revise this. This is an important topic. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limb within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So our senses are always dragging, right? I want to buy a house, I want to buy a car, I want to buy this, a sari, a necklace, so many things, not one or two. If you go around your house and count the number of things you have, there may be close to 100,000 items in your home right now. Believe it or not. So many items. Different kinds of books, different kinds of plastic items, computer monitors, screens, computers, bags, trinkets, jewelry. So all these are called sense objects. And it's very difficult to stay away from these sense objects. But the recommendation from Krishna is just like a tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, we should pull our senses into the shell and use only when are needed. Just because you have eyes doesn't mean that you're going to watch so many movies. Just because you have ears doesn't mean you will listen to various kinds of musical items like that. Just because your tongue doesn't mean that you'll eat all kinds of nonsense like meat or fish or eggs or mushrooms, onion, garlic. All these are depressing items. So they depress your consciousness. Especially in Indian cooking, onion is very prevalent, but it's not necessary. I have not eaten onion in curries for 18 years now. Previously, I used to eat, and no difference. I mean, I'm still alive, healthy. It's not like only onion will make it, or only meat will make something tasty. No. So we covered the purport last time. I won't go into that detail. Vishaya vinivartante
विषया विनिवर्तन्ते
niraharasya dehinah
निराहारस्य देहिनः
रसवर्जं रसोप्यस्य
रसवर्जं रसोऽप्यस्य
परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते.
परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते.
So this embodied soul, the soul is in the body, is restricted from sense enjoyment. However, the taste for sense objects still remains. The taste is always there. We also covered this last week. So you may be addicted to watching a particular kind of serial in TV. So now you stop it because you want to focus your energy on Krishna. The taste is still there, but you are forcibly controlling your mind, saying, no, it's not good for you. My dear mind, please shut up and focus on Krishna. Most of the training is for the mind. It's called the mind training. Our mind goes, wanders here and there in anticipation of some pleasure. The pleasure could be if you are in a 3-bedroom home, buying a 5-bedroom home. So your mind tells, if only I had 2 more bedrooms, life will be so good. Or when we were in India, we thought, if only I can go to America, that is the ultimate. Life will be so good. But after coming here, you know that problems still continue. Nothing is restricted. Hold on just a minute. Hello, Amlu. No, that was an accidental call, and I'm in the class right now. If you want, you can also join the link, the Zoom link. Okay, thank you. So, those desires are still there. The taste is there, but ceasing means stopping such engagements. Why? Why are you stopping? Because we experience a higher taste, right? So there is material bliss, there is spiritual bliss. So spiritual bliss is higher. Having experienced that, then you say, oh, I am not interested in this stuff anymore. Let me give it up. Right? Okay. So Aryan, please read this.
Um, unless one is transcendently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of estables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process, like Astanga Yoga, in a matter of yam, niyam, pranayam, pratyadaran, dhyana, is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna consciousness, he automatically loses his taste for pale things.
Very nice. So if we, how do we measure our progress? We covered this also briefly last time. If you are losing taste in pale dead things, like if you're losing taste in cricket, baseball, you're losing taste in watching movies, losing taste in just generally going to restaurants, but then you're using that time for a higher purpose, like chanting Krishna's names, reading Bhagavad Gita, associating with other devotees like you're doing right now, that's a sign that you are making progress. Right? So we all want to make progress. We don't want to be dull heads in the same level throughout our life. We want to make progress. And how do you measure that progress? By seeing these things. Initially, there is something like, kids want to play, let them play. But there comes a time where you say, okay, enough of prayer, uh, enough of playing, rather focus on prayer. So that is the responsibility of parents towards their kids. There is no other responsibility really. Somebody may say, yeah, I'm sending my son to Harvard University. So what? He'll make a little bit more money than the other people, but you have failed in your responsibility if you have not taught them the spiritual essence that we are a spirit soul and our job is to surrender to the Supreme Spirit, Krishna. Otherwise, you have wasted your life and you have wasted their life also. And as a mother or father, if you waste your kid's life, it is a bigger crime. It's actually a crime if you waste somebody else's spiritual life because you have been given a soul to take care of. And what did you do? You didn't do anything. You basically sent them to some public school, some college, so that they can learn business or art or lawyer, legal work or medical work, so that they can make a lot of money. Right in India, the most important professions are engineering, medicine, law. Why? Because they pay well. All the other professions are neglected. So parents think, yeah, my success is making my son a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. You all know this, I don't need to tell you. So, but that is foolishness because then their spiritual life is affected. At least 50% of the time, you should focus on their spiritual life. You should ask, in any dinner conversation, if they say something, then they'll say, okay, but how does that help you? Or will Krishna be happy with that? What would Lord Krishna do in such situation? So somehow or the other, you weave the conversation in the spiritual direction. It's not easy, but if you do it, you'll also feel immense bliss because the topic is about Krishna. Anything to do with Krishna is automatically tasteful. Material things have a taste a little bit, like chewing gum. You put in the mouth, maybe first 2 or 3 minutes you get the sweet taste. After that, it's like so bland you feel like spitting it out. Same thing with any material thing. You buy a new car, first maybe 6 months, you're very happy. After that, it loses its importance, and then oil change, tire change, this change. And after some time, it actually becomes a headache. So much maintenance required. What gave you pleasure 10 years ago is now like a big headache. Same thing with anything in material world. It loses its taste, right? And if you're not losing the taste, something is wrong. As a soul, you should lose taste for material things. And that is why the whole Varnashrama system is designed, till about 20-25 years, brahmacharya. So you are just studying scriptures, you are studying material things also. And then around 25 to 50, grihastha, you get married, have kids, sleep on a soft bed, go in a smooth car. After 50, 55, time to give up all this nonsense. That is called vanaprastha. Of course, there are no vanas or forests anymore left. So you basically associate yourself with the temple, chant Hare Krishna, focus on higher things. And after 75, if you are still alive, you take sannyas. Most people who are not alive before 75. Like my father passed away at 72, my father-in-law passed away at 62, 63. Yeah, he passed away. My father-in-law's sister passed away at 60. So anything over 60 is a bonus. So you only have little bit of window for pure devotion between 50 and 60. After that, death will come knocking. Before that, you have too many responsibilities. All the headaches, kids' homework, mortgage payment for your house, endless headaches. Endless. So how are you going to prepare between now and to the point when you are ready to disassociate from the material world and focus on Krishna? Window is very small, believe it or not. Like Aryan must be thinking, oh, life is so good. But then he'll go to college, he'll get a job, he'll get married. Before he realizes it's already 50 years old. Hurry, where did my life go? That's how I feel. I'm 53 and I felt like the whole life has just slipped through my hands just like that. It just went too fast. And another 10, 12 years, death will come knocking. So where is the time? Not much time left. For you, you are all probably 10 years younger to me, with the exception of Vidya's mother. But death will come to you also. It's just like a little later. That's all it is. So what are we going to do about changing our material consciousness to spiritual consciousness? Nobody's going to do it for you, believe it. Your boss will only exploit you, encourage you by giving pizza, for working late hours. Because I used to be a manager. I used to get pizza for my team. Just to, do some maska for them and make them work more. So your boss is not your friend. The company you work for is not your friend. You are your own friend. That's it. You have to figure out how am I going to use my life to liberate myself. If you work for 16 hours, your boss will be very happy. He'll make you work even more. So that's the unfortunate side of the modern life. So we have to lose the taste for pale things and quickly focus on the genuine thing.
I have a question, bro.
Yes.
Wait, so isn't necessarily like bad to so let's say like I go to like college for let's say something like computer science, but at the same time I'm doing spiritual whatever others. Is it sure I'd be more is it okay to do that? Or
it is okay to do that, but if you are really serious, you can accelerate the process by going directly into spirituality. Of course, your parents won't like that answer. I have seen some people who went to very top colleges like IIT in India. Right after college, they went into Brahmachari ashram. They said, enough is enough. I don't want to deal with this material world anymore. Some of their classmates came to America, did MS, did PhD, worked in research, and after 10-15 years, both of these classmates met each other. And the person who is materially successful told the person who quit after his bachelor's degree that his life is a big headache.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hold
Yeah.
on just a minute. Sorry about that. So I had to take a call. Um, so your question is very pertinent, Aryan. Should you pursue education alongside? Yes, you can. And I was giving the story of the two friends, right? And the two friends are real people. I'm not making this story up. One of them is one of the richest man in the world. His name is Sundar Pichai, who is the CEO of Google, right?
Yeah.
You know him, Sundar Pichai.
Yeah.
And the other is Gauranga Das, who is his classmate, and he is a temple president in Mumbai, right? So this is a real story. Both
Yeah.
of them went to IIT. Both of them are razor sharp. Both of them are from Tamil Nadu. They still meet each other. Recently, they met about a year and a half ago, I think. One of them makes 200 million a year as a CEO of Google. The other one makes nothing because he's a brahmachari in a temple. And I find Gauranga Das as more happy than Sundar Pichai. Right? So happiness and money are not correlated. So there you go. I mean, you have to decide what you want to do with your life. So there are two extremes. One is totally gave up everything. One totally embraced everything and with relentless pursuit of wealth or position, he joined as a VP in Google, then became an SVP, divisional president, and finally became a CEO.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you have to take one of the two extremes, but you have to make the decision yourself. Whether it will be a 60% career, 40% devotion, or 40% career, 60% devotion. It's all, you have to do that balance because I
Yeah.
cannot do it for you. All I can tell you is give you some examples of people who have scaled heights in both extremes. Right? One of my other friend, he worked in T-Mobile here in the Bellevue area. Then, he met the devotees. He got convinced of the philosophy. He said, "I'm quitting." He was making decent money, $120,000 a year in T-Mobile. Now he makes $0 a year. He went to India and he distributes Bhagavad Gitas on the streets, helping other people become Krishna conscious. Right? I mean, $120,000 is not much, but it's not something to be scoffed at.
Yeah.
Most people only make like $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right? So there you go. I mean, you have to make that call. And then there are other people, who want to pursue devotion alongside business. I know one of my friend has 6 different homes in the Dallas area. He's a jeweler. He sells gold jewelry in Dallas. So he's pursuing his material wealth. His probably net worth is probably around 12-15 million dollars, right? At the same time, he claims to be a devotee too, right? So there are people across the spectrum. I mean, there is no one size fits all. Depending upon your level of seriousness, I would say prioritize devotion over career because career end of the day, I worked in Microsoft 2 stints. One stint after 7.5 years, I was laid off. Second stint after 3 years, I was laid off. So don't trust these corporations. They only want your intellectual capital. Once they don't have anything else that you can offer, they will lay you off.
Right.
Microsoft is notorious for that. Google is notorious for that. So don't trust these guys. I mean, they just want your ideas. Once your ideas are done, you are like a used handkerchief.
Right.
They'll just dump you like that. So focus more on devotion. You have to do something, right? I mean, you cannot say 24/7, I'm hanging around in the temple. So you need to have a little lightweight job to pay the bills,
Yeah.
but don't let that become the be all end all of everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you're asking the right questions. I wish I was asking those right questions. I didn't when I was at your age. I was strictly focused on coming to America, making money, that kind of stuff. But you are asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Okay, Let's do this. Yatato hi api kaunteya
Yatato hyapi kaunteya
purushasya vipaschitaha
purushasya vipaschitaha
indriyani pramathini
indriyani pramatini
haranti prasabham manaha.
haranti prasabham manaha.
The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. So, senses are very strong. I get carried away many, many times, although I know the philosophy. And Arjuna is also saying, "Oh, Krishna, why am I getting carried away?" Right? So, Krishna is giving that answer. The senses are so strong and impetuous, means very stubborn. You say, "Arey, no, you already eaten 20 rasgullas, now stop." The tongue will say, "No, no, no, I want to go eat the 21st rasgulla." Very strong. So we get carried away. And then as a result, you may become fat. So many other problems will follow. Same thing with eyes. Like when I was young, I used to watch one movie a month. Now kids watch one movie in the morning, one movie in the afternoon, because they have this thing called YouTube and Netflix. So the senses are now getting too much indulged. Too much. So even a person, a yogi who is trying to control the senses, drag the yogi away. Okay, Chandar, please read the purport.
Uh, there are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses, but in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishwamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sex enjoyment, although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice. And of course, there are so many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it's very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot see such material engagements. A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee who says, Yad avati
No, go to the English.
mama chet. Okay. Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it and I spit at the thought. Krishna conscious is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaja Ambarisha also conquered a great yogi, Durvasa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Savai Manaha Krishna Padara Vindayor Vachamsi Vaikunda Gunanu Varnani.
Yeah, very good. So there are some examples Prabhupada gives. One is of Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya, basically, obviously, he's a sannyasi. So he's saying, although this thought comes of sex, he spits at that thought, right? I spit at that thought. That's what he said. Bhavati mukha vikaraha means the face becomes like vikara. Vikara means you are not enjoying that feeling anymore. It becomes twisted. And then he spits at the thought of having sex. Why? Because he's now a devotee of Lord Krishna. So they have higher things to do. Second example is Maharaj Ambarisha. Maharaj Ambarisha was fasting in Kartik month. At the end of the month, Durvasa Muni comes just about when he was about to break the fast. He says, okay, Durvasa Muni ji, please come and have dinner with me. And Durvasa Muni say, okay, I have to do my Sandhya Vandan in the Ganga river, Yamuna river. So he goes to Yamuna river with his 60,000 disciples. And then when he comes back, but actually, as he was about to come back, the time for breaking the fast is coming to an end. You have to break fast at the right time, otherwise, your fast will go a waste. You should not break it 1 minute before, you should not break it 1 minute after that window. So there is a window of like 1.5 hour breaking fast window will be there. So that window was coming dangerously close, and his other saints said, Maharaj, you fasted for the whole month of Kartik. Like 1 day fasting for us is very tough, right? He fasts for the whole month. So they say, Maharaj, you have to now break your fast. So Ambarish Maharaj debates, if I break the fast by eating, I would have insulted the guest, because you should feed the guest first and eat later, not like modern day life. But if I don't break fast, I will lose all the benefit of performing this vrata, and I may get some bad reactions. So therefore the saints say, okay, drink water, because drink water is like breaking fast, at the same time not breaking fast, because you're not eating grain or anything like that. So as a consequence, he drinks water. Durvasa Muni finds out with his yoga drishti that the king did not wait for him. So he felt insulted. He takes hair from a tuft of hair from his head, puts it on the ground, and a demon comes out, because they're all very powerful sages. So you should never make a sage angry, because they might use that power against you. And the demon comes and chases, but then Ambarish Maharaj is very powerful, so the demon cannot do anything. Lord Vishnu sees that his devotee is being attacked, and the Sudarshan Chakra on the Lord Vishnu's hand, even before Lord Vishnu gives it an order, it knows the desire of the Lord and it takes off. The Sudarshan Chakra takes off and chases the demon. First it kills the demon, then it chases Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni goes to Kailasha, says, Shiva, Shiva, please rescue me. This Sudarshan Chakra is killing me. Shiva says, oh, this is Vishnu's Sudarshan Chakra, I cannot stop it. And then he runs to Brahma. Brahma says, no way, I cannot help this. This is Vishnu's. Go to Vishnu and beg for forgiveness. So Durvasa Muni runs to Vishnu and falls at his feet and says, please forgive me. Vishnu says, you didn't offend me, you offended my devotee. Go and ask his forgiveness. Then Durvasa Muni goes to Ambarish Maharaj, falls at his feet and says, please forgive me. And Ambarish Maharaj is such a kind-hearted soul. He says, you have not offended me, so why are you asking me for forgiveness? But in any case, since this is your request, I will forgive you. And then Sudarshan Chakra stops and goes back onto Lord Vishnu's finger. So that's the story. So Durvasa Muni, although he was a powerful yogi, he was rendered useless in front of Lord Ambarish Maharaj's devotion. So it proves that devotion is higher than yogic power. So that is what is being mentioned here in a very short form, because this story has been covered in other places. So Srila Prabhupada didn't want to repeat the whole thing here. He says Maharaj Ambarish conquered a great yogi simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Manaha means mind. Krishna Padaravindayor. Krishna's pada means feet. Charanaravinda, Padaravinda. Just like there is one great saint in Gujarat, he wrote this song. Padaravinde namukaravinda Bala Mukunda Manasa Smarami Bala Mukunda Manasa Smarami. Padaravinda means his feet, to Mukharavinda, his face. That Bala Mukunda, but that Bala Krishna should be in my heart, Manasa Smarami. Right? So Pada means feet of the Lord. You always look at the feet. When you go to temple, you don't look at Lord's face. We are not even qualified to look at the Lord's face. We only look at the Lord's feet, because our standard is that. So Then you work on the calves, then you work towards the thighs, then the waist, then the chest, then the shoulders. And quickly, for a fraction of a second, you can look at the Lord's face. And again, you drop your gaze on the Lord's feet. Because we are not even qualified to look at the Lord's face. We are so fallen people, right? Very ordinary people. So maybe for a fraction of a second, you look at the Lord's face, and again, you look at his feet. That is the way to look at the Lord. You don't directly look at his face. Who are you to look at the Lord's face? We are not qualified. Tani sarvani samyamya
तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य
yukta asita matparah
युक्त आसीत मत्परः
vasehi yashendriyani
वासे हि यशेन्द्रियाणि
tasya prajna pratishtita.
तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
One who restrains his senses. Remember, for the last 4 verses, Krishna is just talking about senses and how to control them. Modern life teaches you how not to control your senses with sex literature, magazines, advertisements. So your senses are always running. Array, BMW 8 Series has come, or this particular bottle of vodka is being advertised. Modern life means they want to make your senses go out of control. Vedic life means your senses should be controlled. So one who restrains his senses and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. Okay, so who is there? We have Devika. Please read this purport.
That the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaja Ambarisha, and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sages' injustice and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai mana Krishna padaravindayor vachamsi vaikuntha gunanu varnane Karav Harer Mandira Marjana Dishu Shrutim Chakarachyuta Sat Kathodaye Mukunda Lingalaya Darshane Drishau Tad Bhritaya Gatra Sparshe Anga Sangamam Granam Chatat Pada Saroj Saurabhe Srimat Tulasya Rasanam Tad Arpite. पादव हरे क्षेत्र पदानुसर्पणे शिरो ऋषिकेश पदाभिवंदने कामं च दास्य न तु काम काम्यया यथोत्तम श्लोक जनाश्रय रतिः. King Ambarisha fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulasi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy place where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become a Matpar, devotee of the Lord. The word Matpar is most significant in this connection. How one can become Matpar is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarisha. Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan, a great scholar and acharya in the line of Matpar, remarks, Mad Bhakti Prabhavena, Sarvendriya Vijaya Purvika, Swatma Drishti, Sulabheti Bhava. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of a devotional service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As a blazing fire burns everything within a room, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns off all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than the Vishnu form simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of real yoga.
Very good. Your pronunciation is very good in Sanskrit. So did you have some background in Sanskrit?
Yeah, I studied 3-4 years in
Oh,
school.
that's why. That's why. You are able to very fluently recite the shlokas. Very nice. So again, what we talked about Maharaj Ambarish, what he did was his feet walked to the temple, hand in cleaning the temple, ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, body in touching the body of devotee, nostrils in smelling the flavor of flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him and the prasadam that comes with the tulsi leaves, legs in traveling to holy place, right? Offering obeisances, the body, entire body, falling on the ground to offer the respects to the Lord. So coming back to Aryan's earlier question, so what should I do? Look at Maharaj Ambarish. He had a kingdom to run. He ran it very well. But every day he would do all these things. Twice a day he would go to the temple. And his whole focus was on devotion first and administration second. Right? So we should also think on those lines. Devotion first lifestyle. First comes Krishna, everything else comes after that. So that's how we should be. Not everybody can be a sannyasi. So you still have to, I mean, if you need to, you have to work. And most people need to, right? They have some desires as well as some financial obligations. But some people have totally given up, just like this friend from T-Mobile. He quit. He became full-time in India. He is distributing books, Bhagavad Gitas on the streets to other people. That's a very humble position compared to where he was, making good amount of money. So we have to figure out what do I want to do with my life, right? So do I want to make a lot of money? That's possible. Of course, not beyond your karma. If your karma decides that you'll only make X, you cannot do X plus Y. A lot of people are working very hard, but whatever their karma ordains, you're only getting that, right? For example, my batchmates are like vice presidents and senior vice presidents. Why am I not the vice president? Because my karma brought me up to a certain level. I'm better than vast majority of the world's population, but I'm not in the top either. So there's no point in banging your head against the wall saying that I want to become X, when your karma will allow you only to be X minus 10. So then you reconcile life with that, and then you focus primarily on devotional activities. Just because you become a full-time devotee doesn't mean that you will not have the facilities ordained by your karma, right? When Srila Prabhupada landed in London airport, his disciples came with a Rolls Royce. And Prabhupada said, why did you bring such an expensive car for me? He said, Prabhupada, you are our guru. For you, the best, nothing but the best. Right? So that's how they treated him, like best of the best. And he established 108 temples when he was on the planet. And wherever he used to land, group of devotees were sing and chant in the airport, bring the most expensive car possible with their financial situation, take him to the temple. There would be a room waiting for him. They would make cook nice items, offer to the Lord and give prasadam wherever he went, right, around the world. So he never lost any facilities. If I go on Microsoft work to some city, I have to rent my own budget car and drive. But for Prabhupada, disciples are coming up with a Rolls Royce car. So he never lost on any facilities, right? So whatever you are ordained to get, you'll get. Focus should be on devotion, because other things will automatically come. Even in my own life, to the extent that I focused on my devotion, a lot of things automatically happen for me. Other people work very hard for those facilities, but those things are coming on a platter for me. How did that happen? Tell me. So we have to fulfill the desires of the Lord. And what is the desire of the Lord? Anybody? What is the desire of the Lord? Does the Lord want more money? Bigger car? Lord has
We
everything.
should think of,
Huh? What is that?
we should all think about him
Yeah.
and try to go to him.
Yeah, try to go to him. The second part. The Lord wants all of his children to come back to him. So if you facilitate at least one or two souls to go back to him, what would be the Lord's disposition or outlook towards you? Yeah, say something. What would the Lord think about you if you bring other people close to him?
He'll be happy.
Yes, he'll be happy. Like that, right? Suppose your child is, God forbid this happens, your child is lost in some festival that you go, Bumbershoot Festival in Seattle, for example. Not that that's very interesting. It's horrible, but just in case, hypothetically. Your kid gets lost and you put a police complaint, you're coming home and crying, and somebody, some car stops in front of your lobby and the door opens and your kid jumps out and says, "Mommy," and comes and hugs you. And then the person who brought your kid home gets off the car. What is your feeling towards that individual who brought your kid back home?
Very thankful, very happy,
Very
and that becomes the
grateful.
most dear.
Yeah, that person becomes the most important person in your life because he rescued your kid and brought him back. Right? Same thing. So when you teach about Krishna to other people, Krishna becomes very, very happy. So that's the desire of the Lord. Lord doesn't need your, two puris on a plate and little bit sabji. He says, "Arey, I have 16,108 gopis making 64 dishes each." He doesn't need your silly fried rice and two puris and some sabji on a plate. That is for you're showing your love towards the Lord. But he doesn't need that. He already has more than that. What he needs is that everybody should come to him. And if you can facilitate that process, he'll be super happy. So each one of you should at least bring one person closer to the Lord. Maybe that's your husband or daughter or mother-in-law. Normally people don't like their mother-in-laws. But in this case, you can bring them closer to Krishna and Krishna will be happy with you. In California, behind every house, there is a small quarters. And I asked, what is that quarters? Oh, that's called the mother-in-law quarters. So why should mother-in-law live separate from the family? Never understood that concept, right? Which means that people don't like their mother-in-laws. That's why there's the concept of mother-in-law quarters. So we should work to not only purify ourselves, but also to help other people. Then Krishna will be more pleased with you. Actually, you cannot please Krishna. What does he not have? He has everything. And whatever we have is also given by him only. So whatever you give, like if you drop $100 in hundi, you may think, such a great donation I gave. Okay, it is great for you. For God, he's saying, okay, you have 57,900 in your bank and you give me $100. So $57,800 is still in the bank. So I'm not really pleased with you, my devotee. He's not really pleased with us from that perspective. He wants you more than your money. It's easy to drop some donation, right? But it's very difficult to surrender to the Lord. Right? He wants you, not your money, because your money is also his money. Anyhow. So one of the acharyas sings a song, Manas deho geho jo kichu mor arpilu tuva pade Nanda Kishore. Manasa means mind. Deho means body. Geho means whatever else I have. Jo kichumor, whatever is mine. Arpilu means I am arpana. I am giving it to you. Nanda Kishore means son of Nanda, Krishna. So he wants you. Your money is of no consequence to him. So that is why this colleague of mine from T-Mobile quit his job and he offered himself to Krishna. He said, on the roads, I will distribute your glories, distribute Bhagavad Gita's on the street. Right? There are some great souls like that who will do magnificent things. So that's the thing. We have to be a Matpar devotee. We have to do everything for Krishna, walking, talking, even sleeping for Krishna, like that. So how can you sleep for Krishna? What is the concept of sleeping for Krishna? The gopis didn't want to sleep. They said, by sleeping, I am not able to see my Krishna. They did not even want to blink their eyes because they're saying, by blinking, I am losing a fraction of a second looking at my Krishna. Even they curse their eyelids. They say, you dirty eyelids, how dare you come and shut my eyes so that I cannot see Krishna for that fraction of a second. So don't close my eyes, you eyelids. That's how they would curse their eyelids. Pretty tall order. Right? So how can you sleep for Krishna? So when you work hard, you get tired, right? What happens if you don't sleep?
Even more tired?
Yes, you'll be tired the next day. So you work so much for Krishna, then you sleep saying, I want to rest this body so that I can work for you again tomorrow, Krishna. But then tomorrow you should not go and watch a movie. Then it's not working for Krishna. Right? So it's very, very tricky. Very, very tricky. Sometimes you may cook so many items for yourself, and then you use, oh Krishna, look how many items I cook for you. So Krishna consciousness means you start off by saying, Krishna, I will cook all these things for you. If anything is left, I will eat. Otherwise, I won't eat. So that is Krishna consciousness, right? Even small thing as eating and sleeping can be for yourself or can be for Krishna. So our consciousness should be such that, Oh, I'm waking up for you, my Krishna. I'll go sing for you the morning prayers. Samsara dava lalita loka tranaya karunya gana ganatvam praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya vande guru sri charanaravindam, etc. That's just the first verse out of the 8 verses. And then you come down into kitchen. Oh, I'll cook for you, Krishna. Of course, you're cooking to feed your kids, but your consciousness should be, I'm cooking for you, Krishna. I will offer this to you and then I will feed my kids. So no eating before Krishna eating. So you cook for Krishna, you go to work, you say, okay, I'm going to work for Krishna. Out of this, every 10%, 20%, I will offer it to you in terms of Bhagavad Gita's or building temples or whatever. Of course, it should be 100%, but we are not really at that platform. Anyway, 100%, so 33% government only takes as taxes anyways. So with whatever is left after you pay your mortgage and buy groceries, the rest you should say, Krishna, I'm offering this to you for this X, Y, and Z reason. Not easy, but I'm saying that is the standard. So you cook for Krishna, you wake up for Krishna, you sleep for Krishna, you take bath for Krishna. Everything that you do is for Krishna. That should be our approach. Then that is called Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it is Trump consciousness, Obama consciousness, grandmother consciousness, boss consciousness. But we want you to be Krishna conscious. Anything else is a waste of time.
I think mostly, Prabhuji, we are in the part of material consciousness, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are all in material consciousness. Let's not kid ourselves. But we have to transform it somehow. That is the goal of this whole movement, Krishna consciousness movement. Our organization is called International Society for Krishna Consciousness. That's it. We are not into converting anybody. We are not into making anybody rich or poor. Our job is to transform the consciousness from matter to Krishna. Sometimes people come to temple and say, Prabhuji, should I take this job or that job? Okay, take whatever is convenient to you, but focus on Krishna. We are not here to give you material advice. There are enough people in the world to give you that, and they will mislead you also. Our job is how to transform our material consciousness into Krishna consciousness and go back to Him at the time of death. That's it. That's the one sentence vision statement. Everything else is a matter of detail. Like in order to transform consciousness, you need to read Bhagavad Gita, chant Hare Krishna mantra, fast on Ekadasi, fast on Janmashtami. All those are details, but only mission statement is transformation. All the information that I'm giving you should lead to your transformation. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. You might as well go and watch TV or play cricket. Right? So transformation, that is our goal. Just like the buzzword these days, digital transformation everywhere. So this is consciousness transformation. Okay, now let's do the tools. That is the theory. Let's chant. Sri Krishna Chaitanya